Today we are going to be looking at factoring three terms. So when we factor three terms, there are a couple of steps that we have to consider. The first step is to take out the GCF. This is a very important step because it makes the problem much easier to solve. The GCF is also known as the greatest common factor. The next step is to find what multiplies to give me the first times the last. And the final step is to find what adds to give me the middle term. Let's begin with an example. Our first problem is x squared plus 8x plus 15. So we begin by looking at the first step, which is there a GCF? And by looking at this problem, you can see that there isn't a certain number that you can take out of all of them. So there is no GCF. So you begin by asking the next question. What can you times by the first, or what is the first term by times the second term? And when you multiply them together, you get 15. And so then you do the next step, and you have to find all the factors of 15 that might equal the middle term, which is 8. So you multiply all the numbers that might multiply together to get to 15 that will equal 8. So our first is 1 and 15. And if you add those two together, they do not equal 8. So we go to the next two factors, which are 3 and 5. And when you add those two together, you do get 8. So those are the two factors we're going to use when we get to our next step. So when we get to our next step, we add our brackets with the x in them, and we add in our numbers. And in this case, it's 5 and 3. So then that is going to be our final answer, because when we multiply them together, we get our beginning problem, which is x squared plus 8x plus 15. Alright, let's do a little bit trickier example. So then our next one is 5x squared minus 35x plus 50. So we have to begin by looking at our GCF. So we look at all the numbers in our equation and see if there's anything that we can take out. And when we look at it, we can see that we can take out a 5 from all the numbers. So we're going to take out the 5, and our new equation is 5 times x squared minus 7x plus 10. So when we look at our new equation, we have to look at our first term and our last term to see what they multiply together to find, which is 10. And so our next step is to find all the factors of 10 that might equal, to add together to that equals to negative 7. So our first is 1 and 10, and when we look at them, when you add them together, they do not equal negative 10, so those can be crossed off the list. And our next one is 2 and 5, and those two numbers do add up to equal to 7, but not negative 7. So we're going to look at negative 2 and negative 5, and those do equal negative 7, so those are going to be the numbers that we are going to plug into our equation. Oh, yes, multiply to add them into our equation. To get it. Our next one. So when we plug them in, our new equation is 5 times x minus 5 times x minus 2, which then equals, when you multiply all them together, they equal to our original problem. So that is our final answer. And our roots in our equation are 5 and 2. I'm going to show you how to find our roots right here. So in order to find our roots, you have to set them equal to 0. So you're going to set x minus 5 and x minus 2 equal to 0 on both sides. And so our next step is to take the number and bring it to the other side on both sides. So in this case, you're going to add 5 and subtract 2, and your roots, and add 2, and you're going to end up with x equals 5 and x equals 2. Alright, let's try another problem. Our next one is 4x squared minus 32x plus 48. So once again, we're going to look at our first step, which is there a GCF? And when we look at it, you can see that you can take a 4 out of all these numbers. So our new answer, or our new problem, is going to be 4 times x squared minus 8x plus 12. And when we do this problem, you need to remember the 4. It is very important to remember it throughout the problem. So our new thing that we're going to look at is 1x squared minus 8x plus 12, and remember the 4. But for this problem, we're going to look at the first times the last, and when you look at both of them and multiply them together, you get 12. So we're going to look at all the factors of 12. And so our first one is 1 and 12, and when you add them together, you do not get negative 8. So the next two we're going to look at is 2 and 6. And when you add them together, you get 8, but not negative 8. So when we look at negative 2 and negative 6, they both work, and when you multiply them together, you do get positive 12. And when you add them, you get negative 8. So those are the two factors that we're going to be using. So over here, you can see that we remember to add the 4, and you plug in those two numbers, so it's 4 times x minus 6 times x minus 2. And when you multiply all those out together, you do equal up back to the original problem, which is 4x squared minus 32x plus 38. And so we know that that is our final answer, 4 times x minus 6 times x minus 2. So our roots are x equals 6 and x equals 2. Alright, let's try another example, a little bit easier. X squared minus 6x plus 9. So our first step is to look for a GCF. But when you look at this problem, you cannot find a number that can be taken out of all of the variables. So we move on to our next step, which is what multiplies from the first times the last. And when you look at 1 times 9, it equals 9. So we're going to look at all the factors of 9. So we begin with 1 and 9, and when you add 1 and 9 together, you do not get negative 6. So we're going to move on to the next, which is 3 and 3. And so you do get 6, but it's not negative 6. So we're going to try negative 3 and 3 in this case. And so we're going to plug them into the problem. So it's x minus 3 times x minus 3. So when we come up here, that's going to be our final answer. And so our roots are x equals 3. But in this case, it's a little bit special because they are the same thing. So for our final answer, we're going to write x minus 3 squared because they're both the same. Alright, this is probably our trickiest problem. So it's 3x squared minus 8x plus 4. So we're going to begin by looking for a GCF. And even though there is a number in the front, there is not something that you can take out of all the numbers. So we move on to our next step, which is what multiplies from the first to the last. So 3 times 4 equals 12. So we're going to look at all the variables of 12, or all the factors of 12, that might equal to negative 8. So we begin with 1 and 12, and those do not add up to equal to negative 8. So we move on to 2 and 6. And even though those equal 8, when you add them together, they do not equal negative 8. So we move on to negative 2 and negative 6. And when you add those together, they equal negative 8. And when you multiply them together, they equal positive 12. So those are the factors that we're going to be using. So we plug them into the equation. So now our new equation is 3x squared minus 6x minus 2x plus. Alright, this is probably our most difficult problem. So it's 3x squared minus 8x plus 4. So you begin by looking for a GCF. And even though there's a number in front, there's not something that can be taken out of every single variable. So I move on to our next step, which is what is multiplied from the first to the last. So 3 times 4 is 12. And so when we look at all the factors of 12 that might equal negative 8, we begin by looking at 1 and 12. And even though they multiply to equal 12, they don't equal negative 8. So we begin to look at the next one, which is 2 and 6. And even though they equal 8, they are not negative 8. So we go to the next one, which is negative 2 and negative 6, which when you add them up, they equal negative 8, and when you multiply them together, they equal positive 12. So we're going to plug them into the equation. So our new equation is 3x squared minus 6x minus 2x plus 4. So we're going to group them together by putting brackets around two variables each. So when we come up here, we're going to look at our new equation all grouped up, and we're going to take out the GCF of each of the brackets. So when you take out a GCF of the first parenthesis, you can see that we can take a 3x out of each of those. So our new equation is 3x times x minus 2. And so when you look at this one, you can see that you can take a negative 2 out of each of these. So our new equation over here is negative 2 times x minus 2. You can see that both of these are the same, which is good because they need to be. And so you're going to take these two and put them in their own bracket so that our new equation is 3x squared minus 2 times x minus 2. And so to find our roots for this equation, we have to equal them to 0 just like before. So we equal 3x minus 2 equal to 0. So we bring the 2 to the other side just like before by adding it. So it is 3x equals 2. So then we're going to divide the 3 to each side. And so x equals 2/3. And our other root, we're going to equal that to 0 so that it will equal x equals 2. Alright, for our final one, we're going to do something easy. X squared minus 4x plus 4. So we look for a GCF, and we can find in this problem that there isn't one. And so we go to the first times the last, and when you multiply them together, you equal 4. And so we are going to find all the factors of 4 that might equal to negative 4. So we begin with 1 and 4, and when you add them together, they do not equal negative 4. So we're going to move on to 2 and 2. And when you add them together, they equal 4, but not negative 4. So we're going to go to negative 2 and negative 2. And those equal negative 4 when you add them together and equal positive 4 when you multiply them together. So we're going to plug them in to the parentheses so that you get x minus 2 times x minus 2. So when you come up here, for our final answer, just like before, we're going to put them together to get x minus 2 squared. Thank you so much for following along with me and factoring with 3 terms.